A ripple of static ran across every communication channel in the galaxy, a shiver through signals that no one could ignore. Screens flickered to life on battle stations, command decks, and civilian homes alike. The announcement was simple, chilling, and absolute. 9,700 ships had set course for Earth, and only 18 had returned. For a heartbeat, the entire galaxy froze. Humanity had always been insignificant, a minor blip in galactic charts, barely worth noting. Yet now, the greatest fleets the Council could muster were hurtling toward a planet they assumed would crumble under the weight of their superiority. Debris drifted silently in orbit, faintly glowing in the starlight, hulls torn open, weapons dark, ships frozen mid-flight as if the void itself had swallowed them whole. Eyewitnesses whispered about fleets vanishing without a trace, entire legions devoured by something unseen, and somewhere deep within that immensity of chaos, Captain Mara Jensen stared at the projection hovering before her, her jaw tight, hands trembling ever so slightly. Her brother had disappeared during a minor skirmish years ago, a loss that had never fully healed. She swallowed hard, the memory rising unbidden like smoke, and whispered to no one, "I should have saved him." Her voice barely carried above the hum of the station's power reactors, but the weight behind it was unmistakable. Beside her, Dr. Elias Vonn adjusted his glasses, his mind already racing through the patterns streaming across the holographic starfield. Brilliant, meticulous, and painfully awkward in human interactions. Elias thrived on probabilities and precision. His finger traced lines across projected battle formations, eyes narrowing. "They're moving predictably," he murmured, almost as if to himself. "Not chaos, intention." Mara's gaze sharpened, suspicion flaring. "Predictable. That's not something we usually get to count on," she said, her voice tight. He hesitated, glancing at her. "But if we understand them, we can use it against them. We can survive." Mara swallowed, feeling the tension coil inside her chest. "Or die trying," she muttered, her voice more to herself than to him. Outside, the reinforced windows of the orbital defense station. Space stretched endlessly, black and indifferent. The derelict hulks of alien vessels drifted like forgotten monuments, their twisted metal reflecting faint residual glows from energy cores, long dead. The silence was complete, save for the hum of life support and the distant shiver of energy weapons being tested and calibrated. Earth's orbital defenses, a haphazard mix of relics and state-of-the-art AI-controlled turrets, bristled in preparation, the humans who operated them gripping controls with both fear and resolve. It was beautiful in its own way, the stark geometry of human engineering, juxtaposed against the chaos of space and the silent menace of approaching warships. Elias leaned closer to the tactical map, tracing lines across projected star systems. "See this?" he asked, voice low, reverent. "They've repeated the same formations in the last 3 incursions. They expect the same response every time. They underestimate us." Mara's brow furrowed. "And if we're wrong, then we die," Elias admitted. But there was an odd calm to him, a clarity that only a mind like his could maintain under such pressure. "But if we're right, we survive." The first wave of alien fighters emerged from warp, sharp, angular shapes cutting through the void like knives. Mara's squadron scrambled, engines flaring, weapons charging. In the cockpit of her fighter, Mara's pulse raced, yet her mind was focused, calculating angles and trajectories with lethal precision. "Target locked," one pilot shouted. "Shields at 40%. Another called. Mara's thoughts drove her forward. They were fast, too fast, but arrogant. They thought humans were weak, and arrogance could be exploited. Using Elias's predictive calculations, Mara led her squad through daring maneuvers, weaving between drifting debris, baiting enemy ships into traps. Explosions flared silently in the void, lighting up the faces of terrified yet determined pilots. Each victory was a spark of hope, fleeting but vital. Hours stretched into a chaotic dance of fire and movement. And when the first wave was finally repelled, only 18 ships returned. Mara stared at them, disbelief and awe, battling in equal measure. They were not ordinary humans. Their movements were fluid, precise, enhanced hybrids, the product of secret DNA programs integrating human and alien genetics. Designed to endure attacks no ordinary human could survive. She felt a chill run down her spine. "Did we? Crete? Monsters," she whispered. Elias's eyes, fixed on the data streams, were calm. "Or heroes, if we're willing to risk what we are." The room was heavy with moral weight. These hybrids were humanity's salvation, and yet they posed questions that no one had fully answered. To fully weaponize them might save the planet, but at what cost to the moral integrity that defined humans? One of the hybrid soldiers moved with an unnatural grace, scanning the room, its gaze human and alien at once, a silent question in its eyes. Mara's pulse quickened as she realized the truth: survival had come with a price, and the boundaries of humanity had already begun to blur. Another wave of alien fighters materialized, and the hybrids were deployed alongside human pilots. Mara gave orders that were shouted over comms and internalized in the cockpit. Hold formation. Do not let them flank. Energy beams carved through the darkness. Explosions flaring silently across the void, illuminating twisted metal and distant stars. Mara's thoughts were steady, cold, and precise. We are small, but clever. Cleverness can destroy what brute force cannot. The hybrids moved with uncanny speed and awareness, intercepting fire and targeting key enemy vessels. Their bodies a fusion of human intuition and alien precision. As the battle reached its crescendo, the final alien capital, ship a towering leviathan bristling with weapons, entered orbit, a harbinger of annihilation. Mara and Elias coordinated with hybrid units, channeling the enemy into a trap. Energy beams carved the void as the massive vessel's shields faltered. Explosions illuminated the darkness in bursts of orange and white, the flicker casting flitting shadows on human and hybrid alike. Mara felt relief mixed with exhaustion. They underestimated us, she whispered, awe in her voice. Elias, calm beside her, added softly, and we've only just begun. The orbital stations were battered, but intact. Debris drifted silently, the void littered with wreckage. Earth had survived, but the cost was heavy. The questions lingering. The 18 hybrids hovered like spectral guardians, silent but alive, symbols of humanity's resilience and moral complexity. Mara gazed at them, shadows dancing across her face as alarms flickered softly in the background. They thought we were weak, she said, voice quiet but resolute. Let them think that. The real strength is what they never saw coming. Elias smiled faintly, the calm analytical certainty in his eyes unshaken. And now they will learn. Slowly. The camera pulls back, sweeping past the shattered alien fleets, past the hybrid ships returning to station, past the silent orbital defenses, revealing Earth as a fragile blue jewel in the immense, indifferent galaxy. Silence reigns again, but it is not the silence of despair. It is the silence of survival, of determination, and of a species awakening to its own hidden power. The stars, indifferent and eternal, shine down on a world that was not meant to survive. And yet, here it is, staring back into the void, ready for what comes next. The galaxy waited in a quiet dread, a silence so thick it pressed against the hulls of human orbital stations like a physical weight. Reports came in one after another, fragmented and trembling, entire fleets vanishing without warning. A whisper of destruction carried on static, incomprehensible in its scale. Commander Rylan watched the screens in disbelief, the blue glow illuminating the taut lines of his face. His ship, the Valiant, hovered on the edge of the wreckage, a speck of humanity among the skeletal remains of the Council's mightiest war machines. He had survived skirmishes before, but this was different. 9,700 ships had been sent to invade Earth, and almost all were gone. Only 18 had returned, and those were barely recognizable. Kess's hands clenched into fists. He had seen death before, but this was something entirely otherworldly, a force that seemed to erase existence itself. Lieutenant Lyra floated into the control room, boots clanking softly against the reinforced deck. Her hair was pulled back tightly, her eyes sharp, and her expression carried the weight of a past that refused to let her rest. She had lost friends, comrades, and a planet of civilians in the last wave of skirmishes. And yet here she was, alive and ready to fight again. Rylan's voice was low, rough with fatigue. You think we're ready for this? Lyra didn't answer immediately. She studied the projections of alien formations swirling in the void. Ready isn't the word, she said finally, almost a whisper. Prepared, maybe, but ready. No, nobody's ready for this. The emptiness of space stretched endlessly beyond the viewport, punctuated by drifting debris fields of alien vessels, all shattered, frozen in silent testimony to some unseen force that had annihilated them. It was haunting, almost beautiful, in a way that made the stomach clench. The human colonies scattered across asteroids and orbital platforms were alive with tension, every system on edge. Messages came in from the front lines, scouts disappearing, entire fleets being swallowed, and yet somewhere in the chaos, the humans fought back. The Council had underestimated them, and that arrogance was their first mistake. Rylan's mind raced. He thought of strategy, of every tactical engagement he had ever commanded. He thought of probability, of human intuition, of courage under fire. And he thought of Lyra, reckless but brilliant, a pilot who defied orders, but always hit her mark. The pair were a contrast, his experience tempered by logic, hers instinct sharpened by trauma. They understood each other in the unspoken language of survival. The first wave of survivors emerged from the wreckage of the battlefield. 18 ships, barely operational, carrying what remained of elite alien soldiers and human pilots. Rylan watched as they maneuvered like ghosts, slipping through debris, avoiding detection, yet leaving a trail of devastation behind. He felt a pang of guilt. They were alive, yes, but at what cost? Every survivor carried the memory of comrades lost, and every action had demanded moral compromises that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Lyra spoke, her tone almost casual, but there was an edge to it that cut through the tension. "You know what's worse than their firepower," she said. "Their arrogance. They're predictable, and we can use that. But they'll adapt fast, faster than we can anticipate." The human fleet had been retreating, hiding, and surviving, learning from every encounter, every mistake, every lost ship. And now, for the first time, humans had intelligence on the Council's forces that they could exploit. The camera panned slowly over crumbling orbital defense stations, their shields flickering, human crews exhausted yet defiant, preparing for the next wave. Scattered across the asteroid belts, hidden colonies monitored the Council's movements, sending coded signals to Earth. Every microsecond mattered. Every maneuver could mean survival or extinction. The Council itself was watching, celebrating their apparent domination, unaware that the humans they underestimated were becoming something more dangerous than brute force alone. Unpredictability. Rylan's inner thoughts drifted to the moral weight of command. Each decision, each order, could save lives or doom them. Survivor guilt was a constant companion. The faces of those lost haunted him in quiet moments. The echoes of screams carried in the void, replaying in the hum of engines, the flicker of lights. Lyra noticed his silence and placed a hand on the console. "You feel it too," she said softly. "Every loss, every mistake." He nodded, a thin line of acknowledgement, and turned back to the projections. "It's why we can't afford to fail now." The humans launched their counteroffensive, using guerrilla tactics that leveraged intelligence, orbital topography, and every advantage the Council had dismissed. Ships darted through debris fields, emerging only to strike where least expected. Energy beams lanced through space, explosions blooming in silent arcs, and human ingenuity twisted alien protocol into vulnerability. Inside one of the wrecked enemy ships, Lieutenant Eric Voss crawled through corridors slick with alien fluids. His squad had been decimated, but he survived. Each movement was calculated, every breath measured. He was haunted, yes, but his resolve burned harder than ever. Engineer Nyla Fenn, meanwhile, worked tirelessly on a commandeered alien vessel, her fingers dancing over alien consoles, deciphering unknown languages and hacking systems with a mixture of awe and terror. "If we can control this," she whispered, "we can turn their own machines against them." The hybridization of some survivors added another layer of tension. Some humans were partially integrated with alien technology, their bodies enhanced, their minds sharper, faster, yet carrying the ethical weight of what that integration meant. Were they still human, or something else entirely? Rylan watched them, conflicted. They were humanity's trump card. Yet each movement reminded him of how far they had strayed from the moral clarity that had once defined them. The Council's motives slowly unraveled. The invasion was never meant merely to conquer. It was a test, a cruel experiment to see how humanity would react under impossible pressure. And the humans, survivors against odds that should have annihilated them, were passing with a combination of courage, ingenuity, and sheer stubbornness that no simulation could predict. Each battle carried tension that built like a living thing, heartbeats of suspense that ebbed and flowed with the tides of space combat. Zero-gravity firefights unfolded aboard alien vessels commandeered by humans. The camera lingers on faces of shock, determination, fear, and resolve. Explosions painted corridors in eerie reds and blues, The silence of space outside a stark counterpoint to the chaos within. Ships exploded against the backdrop of planets, fire and debris drifting like funeral pyres in orbit. Lyra's voice cut through the cums. We've got them where we want them. Push forward. Don't let them regroup. Rylan's inner monologue raced with calculations and human instinct. We are fragile, yes, but they assumed predictability. They assumed weakness, and assumptions are dangerous. As the final confrontation drew near, the surviving 18 ships, some hybridized, some pure human, coordinated a daring ambush. Every maneuver precise, every strike calculated, yet human unpredictability added an edge no algorithm could account for. One of the hybrid soldiers moved with uncanny speed, intercepting energy beams, and striking with preternatural timing. Yet its eyes held a human spark, a reflection of the conscience and emotion that remained despite enhancements. The alien capital ship, a towering monstrosity bristling with weapons and shields, loomed over Earth's defenses, a harbinger of annihilation. Rylan, Lyra, and the hybrids worked together in perfect, tense synchrony, manipulating enemy formations, exploiting predictable patterns, and exploiting arrogance. Explosions rippled silently, arcs of light slicing the void as energy beams collided with shields and hulls. The ship faltered, shields failing, systems overloaded. Mara of the previous wave might have been a ghost in memory, but here humanity rose again. The final strike was executed with precision. The capital ship erupted in a silent, spectacular bloom of destruction, debris scattering in every direction. Relief surged through the human pilots, but it was tempered by the weight of all that had been lost. They had survived, but only just. Rylan exhaled, exhaustion mingling with disbelief. They underestimated us, he muttered. Lyra's smirk was faint, but present, even in the shadows of war. And that's the first of many mistakes they'll make. As the debris drifted silently around Earth, the surviving human ships hovered in formation, a fragile yet defiant shield over the planet. The hybrid soldiers, spectral and silent, carried the weight of both hope and ethical ambiguity. They were humanity's saviors, and perhaps its moral question. From the orbital deck, Rylan gazed into the endless black of space, shadows cast across his face by flickering displays. They thought we'd be weak, he whispered. But they haven't seen what we've learned, or how far we'll go to survive. Lyra placed a hand on the console, the soft hum beneath her palm grounding the moment. And now, she said softly, they'll learn. Slowly. The camera pulls back to reveal Earth, scarred but intact, framed by the remnants of shattered fleets and the returning human ships. The silence of the void is complete, yet it carries a sense of anticipation, of something stirring beyond comprehension. Humanity has survived, against impossible odds. Not through sheer force, but through adaptability, courage, and the lessons learned from loss. The stars above are indifferent, eternal witnesses to the small blue planet that refused to die. Its people forever changed, its future uncertain, and its strength finally recognized by those who once sought its destruction. The warning sirens blared across every major city on Earth as the alien fleets warped into the system, massive shadows blotting out distant stars. Panic swept through the streets like wildfire, people frozen on rooftops and highways. Eyes lifted toward the heavens as fleets the size of continents began to appear in orbit. Children cried, mothers held them tightly, soldiers scrambled to stations, and scientists, brilliant and terrified, scurried through underground labs to finalize last-minute preparations. The air was thick with tension, electric and suffocating. Admiral K. Lardine stood on the deck of the orbital command station, shoulders rigid, jaw tight. He had faced death countless times in simulations, in minor skirmishes, even in the previous waves of council attacks, but nothing prepared him for this. Entire fleet's 9,700 ships, the might of the Galaxy Council's war, Armada were converging on Earth. Yet, somehow, the humans had survived before. Somehow, he believed, they could survive again. Beside him, Zero Talon, a civilian scientist whose invention had been controversial and, in many circles, dismissed as impossible, adjusted her equipment with trembling hands. Her device, a disruptive energy array, could cripple alien shielding temporarily if deployed correctly. It's unstable, she said softly, almost to herself. If it backfires, it could take out our own stations. Kale's eyes softened for a moment. Then we make sure it doesn't fail. He knew, as she did, that the odds were impossible. Yet hope, fragile and stubborn, burned like a candle in the void. On the surface, Cities braced for destruction. People huddled in makeshift shelters, blackouts enforced by emergency protocols. Every system stretched to its limit. The alien fleets descended methodically, their formations precise, confident, as if nothing alive on this planet could possibly resist them. But they underestimated one thing: human unpredictability. The camera cuts between terrified civilians, hardened soldiers, and alien commanders, their eyes scanning holographic projections in disbelief at how the humans had survived prior waves. The first skirmishes erupted in orbit. Energy beams carved paths across the black void, missiles streaking silently, leaving trails of fire and debris. Human fighters darted between derelict ships, weaving in and out of debris fields, striking quickly and unpredictably. Kale's voice cut through comes with authority. "Flank them from the right, Talon. Get your array online. Now." Syrah's hands flew across her console, fingers dancing across alien and human systems alike. Sparks flickered along the edge of her array, the energy field humming with dangerous potential. "Ready?" she whispered. Deploying. A pulse of light swept across the battlefield, and a portion of the alien fleet's shields faltered, exposing critical vulnerabilities. Mara of previous encounters would have nodded approvingly at the precision, but Kale could only feel a chill of fear, mixed with exhilaration. Among the human pilots, Lieutenant Jox Harrow, young, reckless, and untested, dove into the fray with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. His craft spiraled between alien warships, dodging energy beams narrowly, returning fire with deadly efficiency. His internal monologue raced as adrenaline pumped. "I may not survive this, but if I don't, who will? I have to make it count." Behind him, Lyra Chun's ghost of memory echoed. Humanity had always fought back when cornered. This time, it would be no different. As the battle raged, the aliens became aware of the humans' adaptive strategies. They shifted, attempting to anticipate human unpredictability. Yet the humans had evolved too, learning patterns in alien maneuvers, anticipating reactions with uncanny precision. Zero Talon's array pulsed again, momentarily disabling a cluster of capital ships. Kale watched in awe and horror, realizing that human ingenuity could, in the right hands, level the playing field against impossible odds. On the ground, civilians watched as orbital bombardments shook cities. Debris fell from the sky, streaks of fire raining down as the alien fleet attempted to intimidate, to terrorize, to destroy. Yet evacuation plans, emergency shelters, and human ingenuity saved countless lives. Mothers whispered to children, trying to instill calm where none existed. "We will survive," one mother murmured, gripping her child's hand as sirens screamed. Around them, amid the chaos, Kale's attention snapped to a transmission from an unexpected source. An alien defector, commanding only a small faction of surviving vessels, offered intelligence that could turn the tide if he could be trusted. The moral dilemma was immediate: trust an enemy, even one offering salvation, or risk alien knowledge turning against them at the worst possible moment. Kale weighed the cost. "We survive, or we fail," he muttered, voice barely audible. "And we cannot fail." Lyra Chun piloted through the debris, weaving in and out of fire and energy bursts, her instincts guiding her in ways algorithms could never predict. Each maneuver drew her closer to the alien command ship, the epicenter of the fleet's coordination. Every second brought both opportunity and peril. She knew one wrong move could destroy her entire wing. Meanwhile, Zero Talon's invention hummed at maximum output, temporarily crippling the alien shields and allowing human craft to strike decisively. One alien warship exploded silently, its remains drifting toward Earth like a grim meteor. Rylan, Kess had been right. The Council's arrogance would be its downfall, and yet victory came at a cost. Humans fell, hybrid soldiers were wounded, and every action left psychological scars. Kale felt it in the back of his mind, the weight of choices made in seconds that decided life or death. "We are small," he thought, "but we are cunning, and cunning can defeat size and firepower combined." The final confrontation with the alien capital ship approached. Kale coordinated maneuvers with both human and affected alien vessels. The hybrids, moving with preternatural speed and precision, intercepted attacks and executed higher-risk strikes. The capital ship fired relentlessly, shields flashing, energy beams carving arcs through space, but human unpredictability and adaptive strategy began to fracture its formation. One hybrid pilot intercepted a beam intended for Kale's flagship, moving faster than thought possible. Yet human emotion lingered in the eyes, a reminder of what was at stake. In the cockpit, Kale's mind raced. This is the moment. One wrong move, and we lose everything. One perfect move, and we survive. The strike was executed flawlessly. Energy beams, missiles, and hybrid-enhanced maneuvers struck the capital ship. Simultaneously, explosions bloomed in silent arcs, light flashing across the void. The Leviathan crumbled, pieces drifting into space, illuminated by fires that burned without sound. Relief was immediate, but muted by grief for the fallen. Every pilot who had survived knew how close humanity had come to annihilation. The fleet regrouped, battered but alive, the survivors staring into the black of space as silence descended once more. Kale exhaled, exhaustion mingling with awe. They underestimated us, he said quietly. Lyra, her craft hovering nearby, smirked faintly, blood and debris streaked across her cockpit. And that, she said softly, is their first mistake of many. The camera pans away from Earth's surface, showing the scale of devastation. The shattered alien fleets, and the surviving human vessels. Earth had survived, not by sheer force, but by ingenuity, courage, and the unpredictable resilience of a species that had refused to bow. As the stars glimmered above, indifferent and eternal, the humans gazed at them with a mixture of awe and quiet triumph. They had survived the impossible, and yet they knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere out there, the Council would regroup. Somewhere out there, the galaxy would still underestimate humanity. But now, humans were ready, sharper, and more unpredictable than ever before. Kale's inner voice echoed, calm yet resolute. We are fragile, yes, but we are dangerous. And danger, we understand. The camera pulls back fully, revealing the entirety of the battlefield. Earth, scarred but intact. Derelict alien warships drifting silently in space. And the surviving fleet, hybrid soldiers among them, hovering in formation as both guardians. And a reminder that humanity had arrived on the galactic stage with courage, ingenuity, and unpredictability as their weapons. The Council's analysts sat in stunned silence as the reports came in, blinking numbers across their sleek consoles. Only 18 ships had returned. 18 out of 9,700. A soft hum of disbelief filled the room, the kind that presses against the chest and lingers. Each of those ships carried stories of survival, of courage, and of unimaginable horror, and as the doors of the docking bay slid open, the survivors emerged one by one. Lieutenant Eric Voss stepped onto the platform first, his boots echoing against the metallic floor. His squad had been obliterated in the last wave, friends torn apart by alien fire, and yet here he was, a ghost of his former self. Haunted eyes scanning the faces around him, memories of screaming voices and distant explosions replayed in his mind as if he had no control over them. Engineer Nyla Fenn followed, her uniform scorched, her hands still trembling from the last emergency repairs she had made on her crippled vessel. She moved with quiet precision, instinctively checking her equipment, even as the Council's observers stared in awe. Her mind raced, calculating how they had survived, and whether it was luck or something far more human. Ingenuity. Under fire, amid the human survivors, there were other hybrids, some enhanced with experimental technology, their bodies moving with unnatural grace. Their presence a stark reminder that survival sometimes came at a cost. Mara of previous battles might have been a memory to some, but the hybrids carried her spirit, relentless, adaptive, and focused. One of them paused at the edge of the bay, eyes scanning the analysts, silently questioning what the Council might do next. The survivors' stories unfolded like a mosaic, fragmented yet cohesive when pieced together. The battles had been brutal, the alien forces overwhelming, yet each survivor had learned to exploit weaknesses, adapt to technology, and make choices that would have been unthinkable in calmer times. Each choice carried a moral weight, a question about what it meant to remain human when forced to operate at the limits of survival. One pilot, barely conscious from battle, whispered to a comrade as they prepared to dock, "We're alive. But are we still us?" The question lingered like smoke. The Council expected simple reports of victory or defeat, but the truth was far more complex. The humans had not only survived, they had evolved in the face of annihilation, and that evolution carried its own dangers. Lieutenant Voss recounted how his squad had been cornered aboard a derelict alien cruiser, surrounded by fire and energy fields. He described the split-second decisions, the sacrifices made when no one else could act, the moments when a life had to be forfeited to save others. Each story was filled with fear, courage, and a raw intensity that left observers silent. Engineer Nyla Fenn explained how she had commandeered alien consoles mid-battle, overriding security systems and redirecting weapons. Her voice was calm, precise, but her eyes betrayed the adrenaline that had kept her moving when her body wanted to stop. Amid these accounts, the hybrids demonstrated abilities that made even veteran commanders pause. Some moved with a speed and precision that seemed impossible, intercepting attacks and executing maneuvers that human physiology alone could not accomplish. Their presence raised ethical questions. How far could humanity go in the pursuit of survival, and at what cost? The survivors revealed how they had outmaneuvered entire fleets by exploiting predictable patterns, adapting alien technology, and making choices that weighed morality against necessity. Some had sacrificed themselves so that others might live, moments of heroism that would be remembered long after the battles ended. Each survivor carried trauma, but also knowledge, a dangerous combination in the hands of those unprepared for the consequences. The Council's hubris had been monumental. They had believed in the inevitability of victory, the infallibility of numbers. Yet here, in the docking bay, those beliefs were shattered. The humans were not only alive, but they had also learned to manipulate and exploit the very forces sent to destroy them. Emotional arcs twisted through the survivors, fear giving way to cautious hope, despair transitioning into determination, and grief tempered by the knowledge that survival demanded hard choices. Arik Voss's inner monologue reflected the delicate balance between guilt and pride. I survived when others did not. Is that strength or cowardice? Every face I remember lost is a weight I cannot shrug off. Nyla Fenn, observing the hybrid soldiers, questioned herself in quiet moments. They are human, and yet not. If we rely on them too heavily, will we still be ourselves? The hybrids themselves seemed to wrestle with the same questions. Their enhancements granted abilities that humans could only dream of. Yet every action they took carried the echo of what humanity might lose if reliance on technology or biological augmentation outweighed moral reasoning. The survivors were led through debriefings, medical assessments, and tactical discussions. Each conversation revealed more about how the human spirit had endured, how strategy, intuition, and adaptability had allowed alien ships to return when thousands had been lost. The Council listened, often silently, to reports that painted a picture of human resilience and ingenuity that they had not anticipated. Yet, the final revelations were the most chilling. Some survivors had made choices that blurred the line between heroism and horror. Sacrifices had been made in the name of survival, decisions that no council could have ordered and no standard strategy could have predicted. They had weaponized alien technology, exploited predictable enemy patterns, and pushed themselves onto the hybrids to limits that tested their humanity. The survivors carried not only the physical scars of battle, but also the psychological weight of what it meant to endure against impossible odds. As the last of the 18 ships docked and the survivors exited, the camera lingered on the silent wreckage of space outside, the skeletal remains of alien fleets drifting like a graveyard among the stars. The emptiness contrasted starkly with the intensity of human life that persisted within the stations. It was a haunting, almost poetic reminder that survival carried cost, and that courage was as much about moral choices as it was about combat. In quiet moments, Lieutenant Voss walked the corridors of the station alone, haunted faces of his fallen squadmates flashing in his mind. He wondered what it truly meant to survive. Nyla Fenn, in a secluded corner of the engineering bay, ran diagnostics on hybrid systems, observing their precision, their enhancements, and the faint glimmers of humanity that remained. Are they the future? She whispered to herself, voice barely audible, or a warning? The survivors' accounts, fragmented yet cohesive, told of ingenuity overcoming brute force, of moral dilemmas navigated under extreme pressure, of courage that surpassed expectations. Each story could have been its own epic, yet together they formed a tapestry of resilience, sorrow, and human potential. The 18 ships, battered but intact, symbolized more than survival. They represented humanity's capacity to adapt, to endure, and to confront impossible odds with both intelligence and heart. The Council, silent in their chambers, had no words to match the revelation. The humans had not merely survived, they had evolved, morally, strategically, and technologically. And yet, in the quiet of observation, the Council understood that the survivors carried more than just victory. They carried questions that could disrupt assumptions and challenge authority. As the camera slowly pulled back, drifting past the docking bay and through the orbital stations, The silent remnants of alien fleets stretched across the void like tombstones. The 18 ships, a mixture of human and hybrid, hovered in formation, spectral guardians of a planet that had survived against impossible odds. The humans within them, exhausted but resolute, understood that this was only the beginning. The galaxy had underestimated them, and the survivors knew that future challenges would demand not only courage and ingenuity, but also an unwavering understanding of what it meant to remain human in the face of overwhelming force. In that quiet, suspended moment, Earth's fate had been secured for now, but the cost had been enormous, and the survivors carried the echoes of loss, the weight of decisions, and the moral complexity of a species that had been tested like never before. The council chambers gleamed with cold perfection, walls of translucent crystal reflecting the soft hum of energy flowing through the ship. Councillor Varek reclined in his chair, arrogance etched across his features, fingers steepled as he regarded the whole map of Earth spinning below. "They will break before the first wave reaches the surface," he said, voice smooth, venomous. With certainty. Around him, other council members nodded, each consumed by their own sense of superiority, each convinced in the inevitability of human failure. In the minds of the council, humanity was insignificant, a nuisance, a test, a trivial curiosity hardly worth concern. Yet that very hubris was the fault line upon which their plans would crack. Far above the planet they sought to conquer, human pilot Juno Rai crouched in her cockpit, fingers poised on controls, eyes darting over tactical displays. She was young, brilliant, and underestimated. Her ship, battered from prior skirmishes, hummed with latent energy, systems pushed to their limits. She had learned that council arrogance could be exploited, and she intended to do so with precision. The camera lingers over her face, capturing the subtle tension, the fine tremor of anticipation, the hint of a smirk, the knowledge that the enemy assumed weakness. The council's fleet advanced in formation, a dazzling display of technology and firepower. Yet Varek's confidence blinded him to the subtle signs of the faint irregularities in human deployment. The adaptive maneuvers that hinted at intelligence, creativity, and unpredictability. Dr. Callahan, a human intelligence analyst, observed from a nearby orbital station, her mind racing as she traced every council formation, every pattern, every assumption. "They think they know us," she whispered to herself, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. "And that is their mistake." Varek's overconfidence became the battlefield's silent architect, while he celebrated his perceived mastery. Juno and her squadron used guerrilla tactics, exploiting predictable council patterns to strike decisively. Explosions lanced the void in arcs of orange and white, alien warships faltering as human ingenuity carved openings in their formation. The moral tension among humans was palpable. Some had survived only through choices that blurred the line between survival and sacrifice, courage and ruthlessness. Each strike, each maneuver, carried the weight of life or death decisions, yet the necessity of survival justified the actions. Juno's mind raced, calculating risks in milliseconds. "If I push forward here, we disrupt their flank, but I may not return." Her pulse quickened. She knew the council expected hesitation. That expectation was her weapon. The camera pans over massive alien warships exploding, fragments drifting silently toward Earth. Firelight illuminates the faces of human pilots, sweat and grime etched across determined expressions, highlighting the toll of battle. Varek, unaware of the intricacies unfolding before him, continued issuing commands with cold precision. Yet whispers of dissent fluttered among his subordinates' minor factions. Alien commanders questioning the wisdom of overconfidence, questioning the infallibility of hubris. Dr. Callan noted the fractures, her mind spinning, alliances forming, secret betrayals, weaknesses the council could not perceive. In the midst of battle, human and minor alien factions executed unexpected maneuvers. Ships slipped past capital warships, striking from unexpected angles, sabotaging energy conduits, disrupting shields, and forcing council commanders into reactive positions. Each success amplified human morale and sowed doubt within enemy ranks. The emotional arc of the story twisted with intensity. Triumph was fleeting, tempered by loss. Every destroyed ship carried the memory of fallen comrades, a reminder of the price of survival. Juno's voice cut across comes, tense yet determined. "Focus, fire on the lead frigate. We hit them fast, and we don't stop." The hybrids, those partially enhanced humans, moved with deadly precision, intercepting fire, executing maneuvers beyond natural capability, yet maintaining the humanity that tethered them to their origins. Their presence was both a blessing and a moral dilemma, a question of how far humanity would bend in the face of extinction. Varick's hubris reached its pinnacle as he underestimated the human's strategic foresight. Orders to enforce dominance were delayed by internal sabotage, minor factions quietly shifting allegiance, questioning the overconfident counselor. A human maneuver exploited this hesitation. Explosions blossomed across the void, enormous warships faltering, shields failing under precise strikes. Juno's grin was subtle but unmistakable. They thought us weak, she thought, and now we proved them dangerous. Massive battles unfolded with cinematic intensity, ships darting between debris, beams of energy illuminating twisted hulls, explosions, casting flickering shadows across determined human faces. Dr. Kellen's calculations guided strike points, human and hybrid coordination exploiting the Council's assumption of predictability. The Council chamber was chaotic, Varick's arrogance cracking under the pressure of unexpected resistance. Alliances he had ignored turned against him, systems malfunctioned due to sabotage, and the overconfidence that had been his shield became his vulnerability. The final blow came as a coordinated strike penetrated the Council's defensive grid. The camera sweeps across the battlefield, human ships weaving through fractured enemy formations, hybrids intercepting critical attacks, minor alien factions aiding the humans strategically. The enormous flagship trembled, energy surges rippling across its hull. Varick's expression faltered, realization dawning that his hubris had underestimated not only human ingenuity, but also the consequences of arrogance and political infighting. The battle's climax delivered both exhilaration and contemplation. The Council's fleet was battered, its confidence shattered. Humanity had survived against overwhelming odds, not through brute force alone, but through intelligence, creativity, and the willingness to exploit flaws born of arrogance. Juno's eyes scanned the horizon as she hovered above the battlefield, taking in the shattered enemy lines and the resilience of her people. Her voice was calm but resolute. Overcomes. They thought they'd win. We've just shown them we're unpredictable, adaptable, and dangerous. The camera pulls back, revealing Earth below, battered but intact, its orbital defense stations holding, its skies quiet once more. The surviving human fleet, hybrid soldiers among them, hovered in formation, guardians of a planet that had survived not only through courage but through strategic brilliance and moral resilience. Dr. Kellen's voice came over a quiet channel, reflective, almost philosophical. Hubris is dangerous. Arrogance is a weapon we wielded against them without firing a shot. Varick in his chamber remained silent, a shadow of arrogance lost in the realization that the humans he had so casually dismissed had not only survived, but had outmaneuvered him, exposing flaws he had never anticipated. Humanity's victory was not complete in the traditional sense. Losses had been incurred, sacrifices made, and moral dilemmas unresolved. Yet the message was clear. The underestimated species had emerged triumphant, a testament to adaptability, courage, and the profound unpredictability of human nature. As the camera lingered on Earth, peaceful yet scarred, the human fleet slowly dispersed, returning to stations, carrying not only survivors, but lessons, moral questions, and the undeniable proof that hubris, no matter how vast, could be toppled by determination and ingenuity. The Council would regroup, the galaxy would observe, and humanity would remain vigilant. But in this moment, humanity had survived, and the stars bore witness to the reckoning of arrogance against ingenuity. Earth was silent. Not the quiet of night, but the kind of silence that pressed against the skin and rattled the soul, heavy with anticipation. Deep within an underground research facility, cryptographer Lyra Vonn stared at her monitor, eyes flickering across the lines of alien code that had arrived without warning. The signal was precise, encrypted, almost impossibly complex, and yet undeniably deliberate. It had been silent for decades, a dormant frequency no one had paid attention to, until now. And now it screamed to her, a puzzle that demanded solving. Commander Holt, stationed nearby, watched her work with skepticism and tension radiating from his stance. He was the kind of leader who trusted numbers, probabilities, and the familiar cadence of battle. A cryptic alien signal was none of these things. Lyra, you're sure this isn't a trap? Holt asked, voice low, carrying the weight of experience. Lyra didn't look up. It's deliberate, she said, fingers dancing across the console. Someone or something wants us to find this. But the question is, why? The facility hummed with the quiet of anticipation. Every terminal, every scanner, every blinking light attuned to the alien transmission. Outside, orbital defenses stirred, fleets on edge, human pilots waiting for any sign of the Council's next move. The tension was palpable, like the breath before a storm. As Lyra worked, her mind raced through possibilities. Was the signal a plea for help, a trap, or a warning? Could humanity trust it, or would following it lead to annihilation? Each option carried stakes beyond comprehension. The camera lingers on her face, sharp eyes reflecting cascading code, a mixture of excitement, fear, and obsession. Commander Holt's voice cut through the quiet again. We can't risk exposure. Every second you waste on speculation is a second the Council could strike. Lyric's lips pressed into a thin line, determination blazing. If we don't decode it, we may never understand why only 18 ships survived. And if it's a warning, we need to know. Outside, in orbit, the surviving human ships waited, silent and tense, their pilots aware that every maneuver could mean life or death. The Council's fleets remained unpredictable, yet something in the signal suggested a vulnerability. Humanity had survived previous waves through force, ingenuity, and luck, but now, intellect would be the weapon. Lyric traced patterns across the signal, discovering a rhythm, a hidden structure beneath layers of obfuscation. She leaned closer to the monitor, mind racing. It's like they're guiding us, or baiting us. Holt stepped closer, eyes scanning, over her shoulder. If this is a trap, he began, but Lyric interrupted. If it's not a trap, it could change everything. The story shifted from fear to suspense as the humans prepared to act on Lyric's partial decoding. Small scout vessels were dispatched, following the signal's coordinates, weaving through debris fields and silent zones where the Council's presence could strike at any moment. Each step was a gamble, every second measured. The camera pans across a vast alien communication array, massive structures orbiting a distant planet, humming with power. Lyra and Holt monitored the progress, tension mounting with each transmitted update. The scouts discovered abandoned Council vessels, wreckage drifting in calculated patterns, suggesting the surviving 18 ships had been guided intentionally. This revelation added layers to the mystery. Had the Council manipulated the survivors, or had some alien faction intervened? Emotional tension deepened. Lyric's obsession bordered on desperation, her fingers trembling as she keyed commands. Holt's pragmatism clashed with her intensity, creating subtle friction that heightened the narrative stakes. As the humans decoded more of the signal, it became clear that it contained strategic patterns, movements of Council fleets, vulnerabilities in formations, and hints of sabotage within the Council's hierarchy. They had a blueprint, a secret advantage, and the power to exploit it, but the ethical questions remained. Should they act? Should they expose truths that could destabilize galactic politics? The hybrids, partially enhanced humans among the surviving ships, were called upon to execute precise maneuvers based on Lyric's decoding. Their speed and intuition were invaluable, yet their presence reminded the human crew that survival had already stretched the boundaries of morality. Every calculation carried the weight of life and death. Lyric paused, realizing the signal wasn't just a communication, it was a test, one that measured humanity's capacity for intelligence, courage, and restraint. Holt stepped beside her, tone softened, recognizing her brilliance. You're right, he said quietly. If this works, we don't just survive, we gain an advantage no one expected. The human fleet moved in synchrony, guided by partially decoded coordinates, dodging Council traps, and exploiting weaknesses with precision. Cinematic sequences unfolded, scouts weaving through asteroid belts, hybrids intercepting Council strikes mid-flight, and energy beams cutting arcs through the void, illuminating the faces of determined pilots. Lyric's voice narrated updates. As tension built, coordinates locked, maneuvers initiated. The Council will not anticipate this. Each moment carried suspense, blending intellect, emotion, and strategic calculation into a crescendo of narrative tension. The Council, oblivious to the humans' decoding success, continued their advance, arrogance blinding them to the unfolding deception. Human ingenuity, amplified by Lyra's deciphering and the hybrid's precision, began to turn the tide, exploiting every predictable pattern the Council left exposed. A final revelation added a moral twist. The 18 returning ships had not merely survived, they had been guided intentionally, part of a Council experiment. Some humans faced an ethical choice: reveal the truth and risk political chaos, or exploit the advantage silently, ensuring survival. Lyric stared at the display, mind torn. Knowledge is power, but at what cost? Commander Holt's hand rested on her shoulder. Sometimes, he said, we survive first, explain later. The final sequences showed human pilots executing perfect maneuvers, hybrids intercepting attacks, and alien vessels faltering under unexpected tactics. Explosions rippled silently across the battlefield, debris drifting like cosmic tombstones. The humans prevailed, not through sheer force, but through intellect, strategy, and courage tempered by moral consideration. Lyra exhaled, tension easing, eyes glimmering with relief and awe. We did it, she whispered. Though she knew survival was never completed, was a cycle of learning, adapting, and enduring. Holt nodded, understanding that the intellect had won the day, and that humanity's strength lay not only in courage and bravery but in the ability to perceive, analyze, and act decisively under unimaginable pressure. The camera pulled back to reveal Earth, scarred but intact, the surviving fleet hovering silently above, guardians of a planet that had endured the impossible. The stars above remained indifferent, eternal witnesses to humanity's cleverness and resilience. The silent signal had been a test, a warning, and perhaps a guide. Humanity had survived, and in doing so, had proven that intellect and moral courage could be as formidable as any weapon. The future remained uncertain, the Council would regroup, and challenges awaited. But for now, the planet was safe, the fleet intact, and humanity wiser, sharper, and more prepared than ever before. The stars burned coldly above, silent witnesses to a war that had turned the void into a graveyard. The remains of fleets floated like monuments of death, their twisted hulls illuminated by distant fires that stretched across the black canvas of space. Veteran pilot Soren Kale drifted through the wreckage in his damaged fighter, eyes scanning the void with a mixture of exhaustion and determination. His body was tired, battered by countless dogfights, but his mind refused to rest. Every flicker of light could be a threat or a lifeline. The memory of his fallen squad mates haunted him, their voices echoing faintly in the quiet of his cockpit. We survived. But at what cost? He thought, gripping the controls as he maneuvered through jagged debris fields. Beside him, medic Lyra. Thane monitored her station, her hands steady despite the chaos surrounding them. Her empathy contrasted sharply with the brutality of war, yet she understood the necessity of action. Each decision weighed heavily: who to save, who to let go, and how to preserve the fragile thread of humanity amid carnage. Their relationship was forged in fire-shed moments of fear, hope, and fleeting humor in the midst of destruction. Lyra glanced at Soren through the heads-up display, her voice calm but firm overcomes. Soren, we need to regroup. There's a cluster of survivors drifting near the ardent wreck. Soren nodded, adjusting his course, the faintest smirk tugging at his lips. Lead the way, Thane. Let's see if we can pull more souls out of this nightmare. The derelict alien ships stretched across the void like skeletons of giants, energy flickering intermittently as systems sputtered and failed. Human pilots navigated through this graveyard, executing guerrilla strikes against any remaining Council vessels, exploiting vulnerabilities that had only become apparent through close observation and desperate improvisation. The vacuum of space was alive with tension, every maneuver a gamble, every explosion a reminder of mortality. Among the surviving human fleet, hybrid soldiers moved with uncanny precision, intercepting alien attacks and performing maneuvers impossible for ordinary humans. Their presence was both awe-inspiring and unsettling, a reflection of the cost humanity had paid to survive. Soren's mind wrestled with the moral implications. We've become stronger, faster, more efficient, but how much of us is still human? The first firefight erupted near the remains of a shattered Council frigate. Energy beams cut arcs through the void, illuminating terrified faces in human cockpits and casting shadows across hybrid soldiers' calculated movements. Explosions fled silently, the debris drifting toward Earth like frozen rain. Soren executed a daring dive between two collapsing hulls, missiles streaking past him as he targeted a Council vessel attempting to regroup. Lyra coordinated medical triage remotely, guiding rescued pilots and hybrids through injuries, both physical and psychological. Her voice remained steady, a lifeline amid chaos. You're going to be okay, she murmured repeatedly, even as she treated those whose body bore the brutal mark of survival. The narrative threaded emotional tension with suspense. Every victory came at a cost. Every maneuver saved lives, yet reminded survivors of how fragile that life truly was. Soren's inner monologue reflected this duality. Each ship I save, each enemy I strike it, all comes at a price, and I don't know if we can ever repay it. The battle extended to planetary orbit, where burning debris illuminated the surface of Earth below. From orbit, cities appeared as scars, emergency lights flickering, smoke rising, humanity clinging to existence. Human ingenuity and bravery had repelled initial strikes, yet the cost was etched into every shadow, every survivor's expression. A sudden flare of energy illuminated an abandoned alien cruiser. Soren and Lyra exchanged a glance over comms. "We investigate," Soren commanded, his voice steady despite the nerves knotting his stomach. Inside the cruiser, derelict corridors twisted like a labyrinth. Ghostly hums of alien systems echoed through the metallic halls. Hybrid soldiers moved ahead, scanning for residual energy or threats, while Soren and Lyra followed, navigating carefully, aware that any misstep could be lethal. Amid the exploration, they discovered logs, messages detailing Council's strategy, hidden experiments, and the deadly arrogance that had underestimated humanity. The camera lingers on Lyra, reading fragments, eyes wide with horror. "They planned to wipe us out entirely, and called it a test," she murmured. The moral weight of this revelation hung heavy. Humanity had not only survived, they had proven themselves against overwhelming odds. Yet survival was not without cost. Some of the hybrids bore psychological scars, the result of experiments designed to push them beyond human limitations. Soren confronted one such hybrid, a young pilot who hesitated before engaging in combat. "You're human," Soren said, voice firm but understanding. "Don't let them take that from you." The hybrid nodded, struggling with the duality of enhancement and identity, reflecting a broader theme. Humanity's resilience was not only physical, but moral and psychological. The climax approached as remaining Council vessels attempted a desperate counterattack. Soren and Lyra led the charge, hybrids intercepting precise strikes, human pilots exploiting every opening. The void became a ballet of light and destruction. Energy beams carving paths through debris, explosions painting silent arcs across the stars. In the midst of battle, Soren's inner thoughts returned to loss and survival. "We've killed, we've sacrificed, we've survived. But how do we carry this forward? How do we honor the ones who didn't make it?" Lyra's calm voice grounded him, reminding him that every choice, every act of courage, reinforced humanity's essence. The final confrontation saw the human fleet executing a coordinated strike on the Council's remaining command ship. Explosions erupted silently across the hull, energy surges rippling through the void as ships darted in formation. The Council's arrogance, hubris, and underestimation had created a vulnerability that humanity exploited fully. As the Flagship crumbled, drifting apart in a magnificent yet deadly display, Soren exhaled deeply. The survivors regrouped, battered but alive, orbiting Earth with quiet vigilance. The camera pans across the fleet, highlighting the hybrid's enhanced maneuvers. Human pilots calculated bravery, and the devastation left in the Council's wake. Lyra's hand rested on a console, eyes reflecting a mix of sorrow and hope. "We've survived. For now," she whispered. Soren's gaze lingered on the wreckage of ships floating silently, the stars above eternal witnesses to humanity's resilience. "We are fragile," he thought, "but we endure. And endurance is power." The final sequences emphasized emotional closure. Human pilots sharing quiet moments of relief, hybrids struggling with newfound identity, and Earth itself, scarred but intact, awaiting recovery. The void remained silent, a backdrop for the complex tapestry of courage, sacrifice, and moral choices that defined humanity's struggle. The surviving 18 ships, enhanced hybrids among them, hovered in formation, a testament to resilience, adaptability, and the indomitable will to survive against impossible odds. The narrative concluded with both triumph and reflection. Humanity had fought, suffered, and survived, but the cost was etched in every scarred face, every damaged vessel, every moral compromise made under the shadow of extinction. The stars above were indifferent, yet the humans beneath them had proven they could meet the darkness with courage, intellect, and heart. The Council's fleet surged through space, a relentless wave of firepower and precision, each vessel bristling with weapons designed to annihilate a planet. Earth's defenses, stretched thin from previous encounters, shuddered under the sheer force of their assault. Captain Rylan stood on the bridge of the lead human ship, eyes scanning the war-scarred horizon. His jaw was tight, fingers drumming on the console as adrenaline mixed with exhaustion. Every instinct screamed caution, every calculation suggested risk, yet Rylan understood that hesitation would mean the end, not just of his crew, but of the entire planet. Beside him, Tech Officer Myra Joss monitored energy fluctuations, her mind racing through calculations and contingencies. She had devised systems that could temporarily cloak sections of the fleet, reroute energy flows, and confuse alien targeting arrays, but execution depended on flawless timing. Rail, the outer grid is at 78%. We can delay them, but not for long, she said, voice calm, but tense. Rail nodded, swallowing hard. Then we do what they won't expect. We survive by being unpredictable. The first strike came without warning, light beams slicing through the void. Energy missiles streaking past the fleet with deadly accuracy. Human ships darted between debris and orbital platforms. Hybrid soldiers intercepting some attacks with enhanced precision. The silence of space was punctuated by explosions, debris spiraling like deadly meteor showers. Ryle's inner monologue raced as he coordinated maneuvers. We've survived waves before, but this is the Council's last push. Every move counts, every misstep costs lives. Mira's hands danced across the console, rerouting energy and cloaking, ships in sequences no enemy could anticipate. Let's engage diversion pattern Alpha 7, she instructed. Ships flickered in and out of visibility, false targets exploding in the void to distract the Council's fleet. The tension escalated as small human units struck at isolated alien vessels, exploiting gaps in the massive formation. Every successful maneuver carried elation. Every narrow escape reinforced the stakes. The emotional core centered on trust and reliance, Rail trusting Mira's ingenuity. Hybrids trusting human decisions, and humans trusting one another when survival demanded blind faith. The Council, blinded by hubris, anticipated conventional tactics, but the humans thrived in unpredictability. Rael ordered a daring maneuver. The fleet would split, luring the Council's flagship into a trap near Earth's planetary defense grid. Energy beams painted arcs across the void as ships darted with coordinated precision, dodging attacks and striking at exposed segments of the alien fleet. Myra's calculations proved pivotal, cloaking sections at the exact moment when would have been fatal. Tension built as the Council's flagship approached, confident and arrogant. Rail's pulse quickened, adrenaline sharpening focus. This is it. The line between survival and annihilation is certain. Explosions rocked the Council's formation as human ships struck simultaneously from unexpected angles. Hybrid soldiers, intercepting attacks with flawless timing. The battle became a ballet of precision and chaos, energy arcs slicing through the void. Ships spiraling around each other, debris drifting silently as cosmic witnesses. Rail's inner thoughts reflected the gravity of leadership. Every life in this fleet depends on decisions I make now. We cannot fail. Amid the chaos, Mira identified a weakness in the Council's energy distribution, a vulnerability that could turn the tide. We can overload their shields if we concentrate fire. Here, she said, pointing at a display. Rail nodded. All units, focus fire. Now. The fleet executed a synchronized strike, energy beams converging on the flagship. The ship shuddered violently, shields flickering before collapsing. Explosions rippled across its hull, and silence followed, the vacuum of space absorbing the shockwave. Victory was within reach, but the humans understood that their actions had consequences beyond mere survival. One of the surviving 18 ships carried a message from the Council, a warning that their defiance had altered galactic politics. Rail stared at the transmission, realizing that humanity's survival was no longer a private struggle. It was a statement to the entire galaxy. We have survived, but the war, the real war, is just beginning. The human fleet regrouped near Earth, battered but triumphant. Hybrid soldiers and human crews alike breathed in the momentary relief, yet each knew the price of victory. Losses were counted silently, memories of the fallen carried in each gaze, each gesture, each whispered acknowledgement of sacrifice. Mira Joss exhaled, leaning against a console, voice soft but steady. We did it. Earth is still ours. Rail's eyes scanned the stars, reflecting both triumph and foreboding. Yes, he said, but we've changed them, and we've changed ourselves. This is only the beginning. The camera pulled back to reveal Earth below, scarred yet resilient, orbiting silently under the watchful eyes of its surviving fleet. Flames of destroyed enemy vessels drifted through space like cosmic embers, a reminder that victory was born from courage, ingenuity, and unity. The narrative concluded with both exhilaration and reflection. Humanity had executed an audacious plan using misdirection, sabotage, and unpredictability, proving that even against overwhelming odds, resourcefulness and determination could prevail. The stars remained indifferent, yet humanity had carved its defiance into the void. A warning and a promise. Earth would not fall easily, and its people would endure. The final moments lingered on the surviving fleet, silhouettes against the black expanse, engines glowing softly, ready to defend, ready to rebuild, ready to face whatever the galaxy dared to send next. Captain Rail, Tor, and Mira Joss shared a quiet glance, acknowledgement of shared triumph, and the weight of responsibility. We survived, and we will continue to survive.